And we're live with our 164th episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter, joined by my co-host Seth Law at Seth Law on Twitter. Seth, say hi.
Oh, hey, everybody. I almost interrupted you there, Ken. I don't know what's going on in my head today. Welcome back to another episode. We got a few things to talk about today. There's been some interesting developments, some interesting products that have popped up over the last week or so in the supply chain security space. So we're going to discuss that shortly. I did want to give a shout out to KernelCon training. If you've been listening, you know that we will be there the end of March. We're teaching our practical secure code review, also known as Seth and Ken's Excellent Adventures in Secure Code Review. We're teaching that course at KernelCon. And as a bigger announcement, we will be teaching that same course at LocoMocoSec. Some fictional conference that exists out in the Pacific somewhere, but we will be there teaching on the beach. We've been talking to the organizers and they've invited us to be there. So first of all, let me drop KernelCon training. The KernelCon spacing is filling up. We're getting there's been quite a bit of interest. I think it's because we haven't taught the course publicly for a couple of years, right?
Dude, so, I have not been checking my emails.
Oh,
so okay. I had no idea that we actually were confirmed for that, but that's awesome. When you mentioned it, I was like, I thought you were saying like mentioning that we were trying to go there. I didn't realize that had all been. I was just checking. I was like, wait a second, this is all. Yeah, I just went to the email and I was like, oh crap, I haven't checked that in a while. Because you know how sometimes when it's not on your phone, you like. And you have to go in and like select a different profile and go to that email, especially when you've got like, you and I have like a ton of email addresses. So it's
yes.
Yeah, I totally missed. I need to hook that one up on my phone. I had the old one hooked up on the phone. Anyways, thanks. Sorry, man. I don't mean to derail. It's just I'm also learning network training there.
I'm teaching. Yeah, I'm notifying Ken at the same time that he needs to book flights and make sure that he's in Hawaii along with the rest of us.
Oh man, wow, cool. I'm very excited about that. That's wonderful news.
Yeah. So Neil, who was on the podcast a few weeks ago, is one of the organizers. They've announced it. The call for speakers, if you would like to go to LocoMocoSec, you have an idea for a talk, this is the time to jump into it. Submit and come hang out at the pool with drinks with me and Ken for a couple of days, because that's what we're going to do outside of teaching. Of course, we're going to teach, but then we'll be attending the conference as well. So that'll be a good time. Both of those are confirmed. And they're a good deal too, right, Ken? Like we've taught at Black Hat and other places before. And I know from a price perspective, both LocoMocoSec and KernelCon are way less expensive for attendees than Black Hat is. So come along and let's look at some code.
Which is good because we both forgot to submit for Black Hat. So we were both, that was like what, last week? We were like, oh crap. Like the email came out and we were like, oh no, I forgot to.
Forgot to submit that one. Oh, well, that's okay. We'll I'm sure we'll still be in Vegas for DEF CON. Or I know I'll be in Vegas for DEF CON and, probably Black Hat as well. So
I'm probably going to go out there twice, probably August for DEF CON Black Hat. And then there's like a Jiu-Jitsu con in September in Vegas. So I'll probably go out there like twice within a month. Should be fun.
Yeah.
Get those frequent flyer points.
Exactly. I don't know if our podcast listeners are going to be at the Jiu-Jitsu con. Just
yeah, that's true. Yeah, not relevant.
There might be some, right?
Yeah, you say that, but I was talking to somebody last night from the InfoSec community about judo and jiu-jitsu quite a bit. So, and they're in the AppSec world. So I don't know.
There are quite a few participants that do that in their spare time. So, outside of that, oh crap, there was one more thing that I did want to mention. And I've lost it now. So apparently not, right?
Sorry.
Oh, no. After Dark. We are going to do After Dark. It's on the schedule for tomorrow night. Ken and I do need to get our ducks in a row for that. But at the very least, we can always pull up a random project well, one that's at least accepting security pushes, and start from there. We will be demoing, and there is also we posted this last week, and the blog is now live for Absolute AppSec. If people did not know that, right? And there's a number of articles that are up. We're trying to post semi-regularly. But the blog is just absoluteappsec.com/blog. The most recent one that went up was an article on the secure code review methodology. So what we're teaching in the course, the couple of different resources and videos that are associated with it that we've done as talks in the past, as we're spinning into it. As always, if you want to learn to do it and get practical hands-on experience, that's why we offer the training. But the content is out there. We like to share this stuff. Obviously, that's why we do the After Dark episodes. But one of the videos that's in there, Ken, is actually you running through VTM, the Vulnerable Task Manager, using the process. So similar to the After Dark episodes where we're applying the methodology, that's the couple-hour video of you actually running through information gathering, everything else that we do in it. And it's seen quite a bit of an uptake. There's been some interest. I know it's been picked up by a couple of different newsletters as well that aren't related to us. Yeah. So if you're interested, if you haven't seen the methodology before, or you're interested in knowing what it is we go over and what you're going to be learning at either of those trainings, jump onto the blog and you can find out.
Sweet. Yes.
Okay.
That's cool.
So yeah, that was my promotion of the blog. We're going to do After Dark. I need a list now, Ken.
We're busy guys. We're doing a lot of stuff, trying to give a lot of stuff away. So
exactly. Yeah.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, we've trained a couple of companies, right? Both consultancies and other places, larger orgs. They're security people and developers on how to do this. It's not something we're trying to hold close to our chest. We just want people to get better at it because we are pretty poor at it. So,
there's actually one thing I did want to just before we get into the news and talking about basically events and our take on them, I did want to share that extension from the students that in case we didn't already, did I? Well, if not, hold on. GitLens, did we talk about that yet? I thought
we did a little bit, but yeah, let's bring it up, right? I don't remember if we talked about it on the podcast last week or not.
That's what I can't remember. Well, I guess I can't remember either if we talked about it, but if not, use GitLens. Some folks brought this up to us. I hadn't used it yet. And then I started using it at work the last week as I was digging into some probably about 4 or 5 different code bases. What's really nice about it, it gives you a really clean view into essentially Git commit or Git history, the blame line by line. The view is very awesome. Another thing is what I saw that I liked about it was that it gives a diff in the IDE. So I installed this in VS Code, and
nice.
Having the diff in the IDE along with Git blame, basically not having to go to the browser for any reason. That's essentially what it's given me, and that's been really just it's those little things that seem little, but they really save you a lot of time. So, anyways, I just thought it was a cool plugin to share with people to try as you're using it, using an IDE for code review.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea. We talk about that. We've got that process in the beginning, especially when we're doing spelunking, right? We're getting to know at a repository and all of the Git. Git history in and of itself is incredibly useful, but having that ability to look and see what's changed, especially a pull request review or some of the other types of reviews that we do, is invaluable. And not having to go to the command line would be incredibly useful. I mean, I know there's some of that built into VS Code, but it doesn't go to the level of what GitLens gives you, right? You can kind of go back to that Git tab or whatever you want to call it, but it doesn't give you quite the same level of detail.
And I was just using the basic case, none of the, like, I'm not like a power user of it yet or anything, but yeah, even the basic use case was like really just time saving. So that's really nice.
Cool.
Yeah, little stuff like that as we, come away with new little things to do to improve your flow. We'll try and share those out.
Yeah, and we do have a blog post that is tools related, or it's got a list of like things we find useful. I did call it absolutely awesome AppSec, right? So yeah, you can check it out there. We'll add that one to the list of just useful items that we use, you and I use during our reviews and assessments. So
yeah, for sure.
Cool. Good deal. All right, so announcements over. We can now jump into more fun topics, I guess. Which article do you want to start with, Ken? You sent me over a couple.
I actually liked. Can we start with the two that you sent? The I want to start with.
You want to start with
socket and yeah,
.dev?
exactly. I think socket is an interesting one. I don't know if you want to post that link up.
I got it. Yep, I got it. All right. So
again,
socket.
just for those, well, I do want to just before, because like we don't have any sponsors. Not that we haven't gotten offers. We just have chosen not to take sponsorship because like lots of reasons. We've gone into it in the past, but anyway, so like just putting that out there that this is not a sponsored thing, since this is a paid for product. This is a paid for product. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? Or is it open source?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there is a GitHub app. I should probably look and see. Looks like it's a GitHub app.
Oh, nice.
It might be.
I'm sure that they'll.
Yeah, I think this is their initial foray into it, and eventually there probably will be a more, detected issues.
Sweet. Sorry, my dog's
it's pretty sweet. Yeah, nope, you're fine. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty slick, right? There's a Mac app for it as well. So you can run it locally or you can run it as a GitHub app. Okay, so, well, first of all, sorry, we're like digging in. We haven't even explained what it is, Ken. So it does software supply chain monitoring. It's called Socket. And I just stumbled across this in the last week, right? It says it's been in closed beta for the past 7 months, but just launched it, within the last week. But basically what it does is it's monitoring. So you think about the software composition analysis tools like Sneak, Dependabot, everything else. Those go to the level of, hey, what version of this software you're trying to install? Is it out of date? Does it have known vulnerabilities with it? Socket takes this a level beyond, where it actually starts to analyze the package itself for dangerous behavior. And, so it's looking at your package.json file, looking at the packages that are in there, seeing if they are, making net connections, doing things that are similar to malicious software packages, and then notifying you based upon that. I did see they have like an NPM, like issues, like the number of issues, like the different things that they'll notify on. And this is pretty interesting, right? Like, okay, you're using a deprecated package. That's probably a dangerous thing. File
access, network connectivity, communicating over various like protocols like HTTPS, outbound. Just like, I think it's just more behavior driven, and like there's obvious cases where they're like, why would a package as it's being installed start
doing some of those things,
right? And like, which is to their point.
No,
I mean, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say finish your point, and then I'll bring up something else. So go for it.
It's not really actually it's just what they raised, which was that current analysis is just sort of like a static analysis of the packages, really, kind of. That's sort of how it goes. But that and this isn't what they said, I don't think, but this is me adding this. It can be tricky, right, to identify just through pure static analysis, just because there's ways to obfuscate certain activities in code. and make it hard for like a static analysis tool to detect that. But they're going a bit further and doing more behavior analysis, which is just overall more interesting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is, right? And there's a limited subset of packages that are in NPM. I mean, I know there's a lot of packages, but it's not like it's custom code. As far as like, hey, I'm looking at your application that you've written in Express. This is limited to the packages.json. There's specific items that it will call out, but it is, I mean, it is super interesting to start doing behavioral analysis as opposed to just strict what package is it, right? Like, and do we already know that there's issues with it? Because you're starting to look at dangerous behaviors. And like, I know, like, I mean, this, Ken, like at Redpoint, we've been working on something that is that's similar to this, but for different things, right? But doing behavior analysis on top of what applications are, like what dangerous applications do versus what benign applications do. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're using some sort of, ML model in there as well. I don't know how far they've gotten, but it'll be interesting to actually run and play with to see. So, I mean, I would encourage people to go use it, especially while it's in this like beta launch mode, to see how it performs against your applications and against your packages.json. And anytime that we can add additional detective controls, I think that's a great thing. So.
Yeah, and their whole point being most tooling is, well, not most. I mean, all the tooling is geared for after the fact, right? It's just like analyzing for release CVEs, things like that. So it's all after the fact. Whereas this is like, detecting ahead of a CVE being like a vulnerability being detected and introduced and written up and a CVE being released. This is all ahead of that, which is just it. And hearing that it's, primarily open source devs and package maintainers that have built this product because they're just like tired of it, right? Yeah, that's inspiring. There's like a, at their core, they like really believe in this. So that's cool. Anyways, I just thought when you shared it, it was really, really awesome, and also flows into the other article you posted really well, which is how to protect yourself as a package maintainer.
Let me share that one out really quick.
Thanks.
Too. Because that, I mean, this was a good list, right? Like, I start thinking about, okay, if we were going to do a blog post, this is Seth M. Larson, no relation to Seth Law, but, close, right? But yeah,
like
he goes, yeah, converged. Me and, converged. There you go. That's it.
Is this your moniker? Is this your you and Justin's like secret handle? Is that what's going on?
No, I don't think so. At least it might not be. It might be. I don't know. I don't remember anymore. Yeah, but this is a very detailed like list of items that you should be doing as a package maintainer or as someone that, is using packages to look and see whether or not those packages are secure. So some of that rolls up into what Socket is doing for sure. But it is more focused on package maintainers, right? Yeah, like how to secure your accounts. Like it's it's the Crocs and socks of maintaining your package, and making sure that it is secure. But like when you don't do it and you have a popular package, we've seen them be hijacked, right? We've seen them used maliciously in certain cases, and it's definitely something you don't want on your hands as a package maintainer, right?
I mean, we've seen a lot of these things that they're talking. I mean, these are all rooted in actual issues that have occurred, like orphaning of accounts, transferring ownership. Like all of those things have definitely gone bad for people, right? So like we've seen people get social engineered into transferring ownership of a project, and it end up being somebody who had malicious intent. We have totally seen, packages sort of. I mean, we've talked about this before, where it's not even orphaned; it's just renamed, and then not like doing the correct hygiene to ensure that the namespace can't be, overtaken. This, people publishing packages at namespaces where they used to exist, and the users of those packages installing malicious packages. Like, that's definitely a thing. We've seen that, especially with Golang, who points directly to a certain major source code repository software.
Wait, who is that?
As a service.
Who is that?
I can't. Yeah. I don't know. I just can't remember for the life of me who that was. Good times. But yeah, no. So like, these are really practical, really great. In fact, I'm actually thinking about promoting this more internally, and I have actually, after you sent this over to me, I did actually send it to folks within our own adversarial teams to take a look at and see what they could glean and think of this. But because this is like very helpful, stuff like this that I love to see. It's very practical.
Well, I mean, articles like this don't get enough play. I'm going to be honest, right? Because there isn't anything super flashy in there. It again, it's the Crocs and socks. I know I get shit about talking, logging and monitoring, because even though like we had December when Log4j was super exciting, most of the time it sucks, right? Like, it's hard to do. And you have like, I mean, even looking at this list, it's like, yeah, each of these items makes sense, but it's nothing groundbreaking that's in there. It's a list of, this is what you really need to concentrate on, right? Like, making sure that you have maintainer roles, right? Like, that's not a super sexy thing to talk about when it comes to security. And like, this has always been my complaint with like the big security conferences and the whole like InfoSec rockstar mentality that we have, is we have hundreds, if not thousands, of people that are implementing security across organizations. And most of them are doing the nuts and bolts. Hey, I'm making sure that the roles are defined correctly, that you can't actually get into stuff you shouldn't be able to, right? Like implementing firewall rules. Like, it's not necessarily easy, but it's just not super sexy. But what gets promoted and what ends up at the conferences a lot of times, and yes, we've gotten away from that. We do have, AppSec villages. We have, Blue Team. We have other stuff that has come up recently, but it's still the big vulnerabilities. It's still the big exploits that get the attention. And I realize that there's a whole risk calculation that goes into that. Obviously, Log4j, right? Like, you could take over someone's everything, right, with Log4j, with that remote code execution. Trivially. Yeah. So it needed that attention. But the organizations that dealt with it well are those that have prepared, that have the nuts and bolts down, and aren't flipping from fire to fire to fire. And it's hard, right? I guess that's all I was getting at there. I was driving to is, I still see that InfoSec rockstar mentality that's out there. And I don't know. Yeah. I don't think we'll ever completely get away from it. But I would like to see more articles like this promoted, because it brings the level up for everyone.
Actually, because while you're saying that, it made me think of another article, which is almost 3 years old. So I'm not going to like say this is, again, it's almost 3 years old. So it's not super new or crazy sexy or whatever we would say. It is useful, however, and I thought it was a really nice breakdown of implementing 2FA for a package managing ecosystem. So in this case, it was Trail of Bits and PyPy. And I'm trying to post the link in there. So again, this is almost 3-year-old article, but I did recently. I was just kind of doing some homework, just trying to see what people thought of, like, if there was research into 2FA and like account recovery and things like that for package manager ecosystems. So I came across this, and it actually had some pretty interesting things they gleaned from how people misuse 2FA, and then how to actually like prevent that. And there's some interesting things like they found that sometimes with recovery codes for 2FA, they would find developers just using the 2FA recovery codes versus actually like 2FA, which obviously is like a bypass of the whole point of it. But it's interesting nonetheless. It becomes essentially another password at that point. But and yeah, it's just, if you read this breakdown, it has a really good set of thoughts on, TOTP, 2FA, WebAuthn, and account recovery stuff for specifically package maintainer ecosystems. And so anyways, I would just recommend people to if this is something that you're interested in, to take a gander at this article.
Yeah. I don't know, right? Like I kind of go back to that, right? Like and maybe it's because I don't play in like the red teaming space, right? Like the penetration testing space as much as I play in the defense and code review and application security ProdSec space. But most of the resources that I turn to are things like this blog, right? Like turning back to who was it? Kevin Cody's blog on how to actually build out or like their discussion on core stuff, right? Like
yes,
that Tim and Kevin did. And it's like those sorts of articles and those sorts of resources are more useful to me in the long run than, hey, this is how you exploit, CVE 2019 06 08 or whatever, right? Like it's just more useful to me in the long run, and kind of building up that library of interesting topics, interesting explanations that help me understand things like OAuth, things like 2FA, that's going to pay off in the long run, at least in the space that I'm in. I'm pretty sure you're the same way, right?
Yeah, but there's also, to build on that, there's also like this intangible, which is people that have actually done this in a real world at scale environment, because that's where I seem to tend to same as you. I'm on the defense side of things, even though we're I manage the adversarial team. So yes, we're offensive to be defensive, true, but ultimately we have to give a lot of guidance and a lot of input, and that leads to okay, well, what have people provided that we can build upon, and done it not from this is my like ideal scenario for my consult, and this is I play both sides, consulting and defense. We all tend to do that. But if you have primarily spent your time in consulting and give out recommendations, and it's not based in doing this at scale, it's not always realistic. So it is nice to see people that have just like shared their lessons learned from operating at scale and trying to implement things like this. I find a lot of value in that.
And I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that. So I know I don't mention it often, but like I help with the local OWASP chapter here in Salt Lake City. And part of the reason that we got together is exactly what you're talking about, Ken. There are a number of resources, or there are a number of companies that are around, and we like to laugh at it's like our AppSec support group, right? Because it's a bunch of people trying to implement ProdSec and application security in different organizations, and the resources that are out there are one thing, but most of the time people aren't as keen to talk about what their company is doing in settings where it's recorded and shared, right? Because they just, whereas when you get in a group where you're meeting for lunch once every couple of months, or, just online, and it's very informal, it's a lot easier to have those discussions. And I know, the large tech companies, you guys have back channels and you have discussions that you have with other large organizations, but that's almost what our OWASP group here locally has become is, geez, I'm trying to train my developers. I got 500 of them. What are my resources? What's worked for everyone else? How has it actually gone doing that sort of an activity? and I mean, I know I have my opinions as being a consultant, but it's really interesting to hear the flip side of, okay, it's this large organization or it's a small to mid-sized organization and what actually works versus, hey, this is what I think works because I put a recommendation in a report. Those are two wildly different things.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, you're right. There is that same sort of back channel support group for major tech companies. I'm on a monthly. Is it monthly? I don't know if it's bi-monthly or whatever it would be. I don't know if it's every 2 weeks or every month. I can't remember. Anyways, I'm on this like a AppSec council thing, and why I bring this up is that I don't have anything externally to promote yet, but we will be doing a basically event centered around, and actually it's a lot of the people that have been on this podcast, that are involved. And but yeah, it'll be sort of talking about how basically AppSec at scale. That's the idea. How do we do our AppSec activities when we're dealing with the scale and size of the user bases and systems that the folks that are on this council deal with all the time. So it should be very enlightening and very useful, and I will 100% promote it. It is obviously free. There will be a bit of curation on the sign up list, but if you're at all involved in security, Seth Larson. Yeah, that's awesome.
Nice,
Very
Seth.
cool. Touting all your work right now. Actually, yeah. That's awesome. Hi. So no, but yeah, so I will definitely put out the information around that event when it's available. But I'm very excited about it because it's going to be incredibly practical in the same, just because we're talking about it made me think of that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, and I remember back in the day too, right? Like, I mean, that's one of the reasons why LocoMocoSec has been, it's a product security conference. We're talking more about like how to implement application security within organizations, like what's actually working. It's not as focused, or, well, I don't know, because I've never been to this mythical conference, but that's my impression. But I know that's what we always liked about AppSec Cali as well, was the amount of just sharing that was happening at that conference from large organizations, people that had actually put it into place. I'm thinking about like Jivan's threat modeling post that he did recently as well. Like those sorts of articles are invaluable when it comes to actually implementing security on it, within an organization in a practical manner with stuff that works.
Not you, Seth Law, but Seth Larson. We might reach out to you on Twitter later to chat some more. So yeah, because I think it would be useful to hear your opinion and experiences in general. So we will reach out to you via Twitter DM. I think is probably the easiest way to do that.
Yep.
But yeah, no, very, very useful article. Very helpful.
Yep.
So what were the other topics that I had shared? I honestly forget at this point.
This is how we go. There was the critical cross account vulnerability.
Oh yeah.
And Azure. And I haven't done a lot of research into that. And then also the cyber attack against Toyota. I mean, are we at that stage yet? I remember Jerry Gamblin coming on the show, I think is like our third or fourth guest, right? Third or fourth episode, and talking about, if a breach happens and no one reports it, does anyone care, right? Like, the idea that it's so much is happening and there's so many of these sorts of cyber attacks and breaches. And within the last 2 weeks, right, like it's gotten worse. Let's be honest. There's a bit of a Wild West out there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was digging up the link. Are we talking about Toyota now?
Or whichever, right? Like, and whatever.
I can talk about that one too. That sounds like a plan too. Whichever one makes sense.
Yeah. I was just bringing up. Yeah, Toyota, just because it was. I'm not sure if it's related to what's going on in Europe right now. like I haven't done a lot of research into it, but my gut is it's probably it probably is, right? Like there's a lot of offensive attacks going on right now, and you want to keep yourself safe. Yeah, like you're going to be defending against this sort of stuff, right? Like, so they're shutting down a factory. I mean, how much is Toyota losing on a daily basis because they can't actually generate those, those 13,000 cars? Like it ends up being pretty severe.
Yeah, that's a non-trivial amount of money. And Toyota prides itself, obviously, we all know that, prides itself on its efficiency and its ability to, produce quality cars in a quick amount of time. And this actually went against their supply chain. So I think it was like, I'm trying to pull up the article, but I think it was like plastic and something else supplier that was actually attacked. So Toyota said that the attack hit their supplier, Kojima Industries. So suspended 28 assembly lines at 14 factories. Yeah, but I thought it said like plastic or something. What am I missing something? Yeah, I don't know. Chip shortage already hurting it, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess
yeah, you're right. So the supplier is it's a supplier of plastic parts and electronic components. So it wasn't necessarily Toyota's factory. It was just, again, this goes to supply chain security. So software or, physical product, apparently hardware. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to have, yeah.
There's been so many attacks. Like I was watching this YouTube video about that aggregated all of the attacks that have occurred since like the start of the war. What is it, 2 weeks ago or something like that? And honestly, I had to I couldn't even my mind. I was like, so it was one thing after the other. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna watch it and not try to retain all of this information. So it was pretty crazy, like how many things have gone down from a cybersecurity standpoint. Just like you said, too much to even really keep up with. It really is.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I mean, because like we talked about last week, like the whole anonymous attack on, Russian infrastructure as well. So you've got that whole section of the internet that is basically unavailable at this point, right? That is down, but you can bet your ass that that there are counterattacks happening. And they are targeting things like Toyota, like, they want to put pressure on the other way. Yeah.
There were,
I don't know,
two anonymous style groups that actually work together to, I'm going to butcher this. They essentially stole information and they basically left a message after they stole all this information. And I think it was a major supplier of Russian military, vehicles and armament and things like that was attacked. And they sort of left a message sort of something around, and I might be butchering all of this, so I'm hesitating to even talk about it. But I know that essentially the gist of it was there was malware being used that was, this is not me saying this is the anonymous groups. They said that it was basically lazy, that the Russians, Russian cyber warfare folks are getting sloppy and lazy, really bagging on them, and then hit them really hard and said this is a reminder of what real cyber warfare looks like, things like that. I mean, it was, and I think they even made fun of them and said their techniques were from 2012 or something like that. If I'm regurgitating all of this information correctly, it's getting pretty crazy, to say the least.
Yeah. There's a lot of, back and forth that's going on. And again, it's very interesting. I mean, that dissertations and, we're going to be studying this period in the decades to come, as far as, okay, it's the first real conflict that's occurred where cyber warfare is on the table, right? I mean, it's kind of happened in the background in the past, couple of decades, but right now it's definitely definitely a thing that's happening, right? Yep. So yeah, get it off your chest. You'll feel better. Yeah. I mean, definitely we do. That's why we do this, Charles, right?
That is
to get it off our chest. Yeah.
This is our support group.
This is our weekly. Yes. Weekly support. So
the other one that I want to talk about. Oh, sorry.
Ooh. Yeah. I think we're good. Yep. Let's talk about the Microsoft Azure. Yep.
Yeah, this was really cool. I mean, not cool that it existed, but it was a cool find and good write-up, and I thought it was pretty neat. So the gist of it is that if you read through, effectively, let me try and get all these details correct, or at least most of them. There is an article here though, so you can read that. So through the sort of automation, it's like a sandbox. So it's like it's like kind of like Lambda, right? It runs your code, runs it in a sandbox, and then it dies down. What they found though was that, or what this researcher found was that, they started to try and do like basic things, trying to like do a task list, trying to do some other things, and notice some errors from like Python errors where the path environment didn't exist. And they were like, oh, okay, well, let me see what else I can do. And so they started listing out the directory. They found 2 directories, a temp directory and sandbox directory, which presumably is where their code is going to run. Start digging a little bit deeper there, and come across code and tokens. So they're tokens that they find, or I think they're like JWTs or something generated through some sort of OAuth mechanism, something like that. So you get a JWT back. It's their JWT. It's how they access various services. But then the question is like, well, how is this JWT being retrieved? So they find a directory that's got a bunch of content. It's got some DLLs, got some EXEs, reverse that code, and then they end up looking at essentially MVC code, right? So they're looking at the controller that discusses like how it's going to return JWTs for customers and goes through the flow there. What they find is that when they add a header of meta, they're able to do a bit more. As the source code, they have it, so they realize, oh, I add the meta header, I can do a bit more, and keep iterating, and then discover that essentially they can generate JWTs for other organizations. So the reason for this, the reason they found it on other orgs, I should back up. Part of their discovery was that when they would go to retrieve this JWT or this token, they would see a port open up that was on a super high port, right? So what is it? Security through obscurity type behavior. So they're continually scanning these ports as they're going through these handshakes and realizing other ports are opening up. So you just start asking for or hitting this endpoint over various ports at different intervals of time continuously, and then inevitably they're catching the JWTs being generated for other orgs on different ports. So then they are able to use those tokens to then pivot through further using further through Azure services as the other companies whose JWTs that they have. So anyways, I thought that was a really fun write-up to read. I'm thankful I wasn't involved in that incident and the response to that, but super interesting. And it's a make. And actually, so there's 2 things that from the article I wanted to point out. One was I really liked the way they looked at, so Crocs and Socks. I really liked the way they talked about logging, which they said it was sort of an insight into, it was almost like reading the diary of what the developers intended to log, meaning they now know what developers think is meaningful. And I love that. And I think it's really an intelligent like behavior profiling technique. And the second one was more just about how if you can combine, like they did a really great job. They've got a good red team sort of approach to it. But if you have source code knowledge and some application security knowledge, it would help this whole process to go further faster. So those are the 2 key points I wanted to point out there, Seth.
Yeah. No, I mean, I posted that quote from the article, right? Log files are great for research. In many cases, logs provide very concise and important information. Yep. You essentially have a chance to peek inside a diary describing what the developers deemed important. And that's super important, right? Like, so number one, logs do that, right? Like in our course, we always talk about unit like test cases as well, right? Because again, it's what developers deem important. Anything that points you at at those priorities that a developer has is going to be useful in the long run. But yeah, the write-up there is great. And they even named it AutoWarp, I think is what they named the vulnerability.
Yeah.
Did they even register AutoWarp.com? Let's see.
Yeah, I know, right?
No, they didn't. Yeah, you got to have a cool name anymore for your vulnerability. If a vulnerability isn't even branded, is it even a vulnerability, Ken? Is it exploitable?
It's got a logo.
It's got a logo.
It's got a great name, a great logo, and that's all you
might
need.
As well be a startup at that point, right?
I did think this was I reported the flaw to Microsoft the same day. I'd like to thank them for being so responsive and cooperative. Microsoft. I'm not reading this because I get who I work for, but that's not why I'm reading it. I'm actually trying to see like what was if they had a timeline.
They did. Yeah, they reported it in I think November, December of last year, and it was fixed within a couple of months, right?
Because that doesn't feel like one that would be super simple to just overnight fix.
Mm-hmm. No, they did fix it. It was within like 4 days.
Oh, that's really good.
So it was reported December 6, 2021, and Microsoft fixed it by December 10th.
Yeah, and it's really hard to do. Again, we're talking about scale. It's hard to make those decisions. There's so much that goes into it between.
So all the rest of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
All the rest of us were dealing with Log4j, and those guys were jumping on this, right? Like that's
terrible, tough times. But I will say, just given the sheer size of the logs they had to pilfer through to even get to, because you have to do a few things when you deal with these incidents. And I know this because I deal with more than I would like to deal with. So basically, you have to figure out if anyone's been exploited. You have to figure out and coordinate communication to those that might be affected, as well as just like how you're going to communicate out whatever went wrong and the scope and what all data could have been taken and all that stuff. Then you need to figure out if you're going to introduce breakage, or sometimes you have to do not in this case I would imagine, but in some cases when you change things around, you have to figure out and analyze like usage before you can make those changes so that you don't negatively impact certain metrics, which essentially mean money, right? So those are some things you have to think through. You have to test the fix. That's a whole other thing. There's just a whole number of activities you kind of go through, but those are the main ones. And of course, I'm like really high leveling that, because if you dig down deep into each one of those, it's like a ton of activities around just identifying if someone was exploited. It's not that simple, obviously. So a lot that goes into it, and never fun, and always inevitably ends up being at night.
Yeah,
for the weekend.
Yeah, it does, because it spills out pretty quickly, right? Like they never happen at 9 a.m. It's always at 4 p.m., right? That you get notified, and then or on a weekend, and we've all been through that, right? Like, and from a support perspective, not super fun, but at the same time, it's part of the job for sure.
It's actually an interesting part of. when you also run a bug bounty and have to respond to those incidents, because bug bounty researchers tend to work when?
Yeah.
Weekends.
Over weekends, holidays. Yeah. Yep.
So when something's detected, it's usually that you're going to be dealing with that on the December. December 6th was a Monday and December 10th was a Friday. So that's good. So it wasn't during the weekend. It looks like it was like a normal Monday through Friday incident. Cool. Yeah. Anything else you want to chat about on that one?
I'm trying to think. Like, I'm not as familiar with it, but I'm enjoying reading the write-up. It's well done.
Oh, I have a question for Charles, actually. I'm going to ask a question for once.
Okay.
For WebAssembly, I know you're working with WebAssembly and Rust. Have you worked with any web frameworks with Rust? And if so, is like Rocket the de facto for Rust? I'm trying to figure out like what are the really popular ones with Rust, if you happen to know that. I know you may or may not be dealing with those more like popular web frameworks, but if you have any insight, something I was trying to figure out, because I know Rust is like presumably supposed to be more like Golang and just, really performance based, not necessarily like intended for like web app usage. I think, I don't know, but right now Rocket is the depth. Okay. Thank you. I was trying to figure that out like last week. Primarily, Seth, because I was actually thinking about with After Dark, like how wild it would be to look at open source Rust web frameworks. I was like, is there like popular Rust web frameworks? And then
I mean, I'm not as familiar with Rust as it is, so it might be a good
same.
one. So because I know both you and I have dealt with PHP and JavaScript and Python. Like, we've done those for years, right? So it'd be interesting to dig into like something that is using Rocket and Rust, just to show the process when we don't know the language, right? Like, it's, I mean, it's something when, we've been developing in Java or whatever for umpteen years. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, Java, C#. What are the popular ones we typically deal with? It's like Java, C#, PHP. Unfortunately, oh my God, I think I told you this, that I actually had to work with. So weird that we did the After Dark episodes. I've never touched Laravel, and then like a few weeks after, here I am faced with a Laravel application, and I'm like, what is happening? But anyways, Ruby, Python, Node has been a big one for me for the last 5 years. Node's been like a lot of my time has been spent in the Node world. So.
And actually, like JavaScript, I've been seeing a lot of. Actually, I've been doing mobile apps, but based on like React Native, right? Which is interesting, like how that's actually implemented on both iOS and Android. But if you look at Kotlin or Swift, right, those are pretty close to, Python or whatever else. I mean, it'd be interesting to dig into a new language that I haven't really dealt with, or I haven't dealt with as much as I have some of those others. But so if you have suggestions, I know we're close to time for today, Ken, but if anyone listening has suggestions for open source projects, something that is Rust related, right? Like Rust Rocket related, or, even maybe Go, some of those other frameworks that are in Go, that would be interesting. I don't know, like we've been talking about doing some in like Solidity or some of the cryptocurrency languages, like the smart contract languages as well. It could be interesting. Like, there's a lot of places that we could go that I know you and I don't have as much experience with. But if anyone has like a pet project, send it over or reach out to us. At the very least, we could consider it, or reach out to the maintainers to see if they have some interest in us doing a live code review on it. So,
yes. Sentry. Interesting. Okay. And then I was going to post up the link for After Dark episode 3 for tomorrow. So it's at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 PST. And I don't know what are you, Mountain Time?
Yeah, I'm Mountain Time. So it's
Mountain Time. Okay.
7 for me, right? Yeah. Is that what time you said? Yep.
Yeah, you're usually 2 hours behind. So
yep.
Cool.
Yep. So join us tomorrow. We'll dig in. We're going to be starting fresh, information gathering with whatever project we decide on, but we'll probably tweet out about the project as soon as we get approval on it before we jump into it, or at least when we're talking to it. We are coordinating some with the hunter.dev people on it. And yeah, looking forward to it. It's always a good time.
Don't forget about Loco Moco Sec. That's going to be a good time.
The mythical conference, the conference that shall not be named. I don't know, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, I think that about wraps it up for today, Ken, unless you got anything else that you want to talk through before we close it out.
Nope, just stoked to see everybody in Omaha at the end of the month. I actually am really excited to just get on the road and do this again and be in person for it. Just I can't tell you how much better it feels to give the course in person than virtually. So yes, I'm super stoked.
Yep. Yeah, me too. And like I said, it is filling up. I know we've been getting emails from the organizers on, how many people can we support, right? So if you're interested, it's a great opportunity to jump in and actually take the course and, exercise or learn some code review skills. We will make you implement the process. That's the whole idea.
Over and over and over again, but it's working.
Over and over. Yes. But it does pay off, right? All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining today. We'll catch everyone next week. We do have some guests that we're lining up now as well. Previous people that have been on the podcast and others that are interested. And if you have other people that you would like us to interview or you think would be interesting to talk to, let us know. We have no problem reaching out to people to schedule some time to talk.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks. Ciao.